Welcome to another Friday episode of Rules I Refuse to Follow. I'm your host, Hannah O'Donovan, and this week's rule: if you're not growing, you're falling behind. Rules I Refuse to Follow is a weekly mini segment where I unpack the unspoken rules women are expected to follow in business, relationships, and daily life, and lovingly burn them to the motherfucking ground. This is The Untamed Divine, the podcast helping female leaders overcome anxiety and self-doubt through the divine feminine, reigniting their flow, abundance, and ease. You've probably heard a version of if you're not growing, you're falling behind many, many times in your life. I've certainly got tripped up in this idea that if I'm not growing as a person, if I'm not growing my business or improving in my relationship, I'm behind. And when we're fed this constant highlight reel of people's achievements and milestones, it's hard not to sit there and think, am I doing something wrong? Should I be somewhere else than where I am right now? But something that I feel so incredibly strong about is that pauses in our timeline, pauses in our story, are data. They're time to notice, to slow down, in order to be able to grow even more. Because growth doesn't always look like forward motion. It often looks like allowing ourselves to get still, to reassess without freaking out and driving something forward that doesn't fit. Because nature doesn't grow in a straight uptrending line, does it? And therefore, neither do you. The feminine honors cycles of expansion, contraction, and integration, and they're essential when you are in it for the long game. When we ignore required periods of contraction and integration, we're not learning anything. We're not able to integrate what we're experiencing. We're probably getting tripped up in what's going on outside of us and focusing more on that and someone else's milestones that they're hitting or someone else's version of where you should be when, than looking at our own lives and noticing, is this working for me? Do I still want this? Do I want this now? Should I be pushing this forward? Or am I actually in a really good place for myself? Because often we're comparing where we're at to someone else's highlight reel and not actually the reality of what their life looks like behind the scenes and what they're dealing with and what they are and aren't learning in their own cycles of expansion, contraction, and integration. And while integration can sometimes be boring because it means we're not chasing the next thrill, we're not getting the next dopamine hit, we're not moving forward, or it seems like we're not moving forward, it is so essential for us to move even further in the future. Because when we ignore the lessons, when we ignore what life is here to teach us, then we're giving up on certain paths of growth. And I have so many examples in my life of times where I sat there and was like, fuck, this is not where I thought I would be, or this is not where I should be. Where I was looking at other people outside of me as examples of how I had somehow failed, how I had somehow fallen behind because I was in my own period of contraction, of seemingly being stagnant, of important integration. This happened when I shut down my multi-six-figure business to open up Soma, to find a more aligned path for myself, which I find myself on now. It happened when I left a relationship at 33 years old that really didn't feel right for me, but I was like, holy shit, I'm 33 and I'm moving back in with my parents and I just spent 7 years on this relationship. And what if I don't find anyone else and I'm just going to be alone forever? And I was looking at all my friends around me who were recently married, buying houses, having babies, and thinking, what the actual fuck? I'm so far behind. But if I hadn't taken that pause, if I hadn't allowed myself to slow down and realign, then I would not have ever been able to step into the unbelievably expansive growth that I've experienced since. I wouldn't have met my now partner, the love of my life. In fact, I'll give you a very clear example of this. In my previous relationship, it was just after the pandemic. So let's say Yeah, must have been 2021 sometime. A couple of my really close friends were buying houses. I remember distinctly having this conversation with my mom and saying, well, so and so, and they're buying houses, and like me and my partner at the time just like aren't there. And I don't know how we're ever going to get there because our financial situation looked very different than, was needed at the time to buy a house. And I was like, I just feel like I'm falling behind. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And she said to me very wisely at the time, I promise you, your time will come. It's hard when, especially the people close to you, are doing these things that you want to be doing. But now is not necessarily your time, and that's okay. And I'm really glad I didn't push it in the moment, that I didn't give in to this fear that I was falling behind my peers and force something that I never should have forced. Because had I bought a house with that person, and our relationship inevitably would have still come to an end, even if it had been delayed a little bit, then I would have had to work through untangling that part of our relationship on top of untangling a long term relationship, which is already hard enough as it is. And instead, we just had to put in our notice in the house that we were renting and split up our stuff and move out. But that would have looked so different and would have been a different layer of grief of having to sell a house, of having to potentially work through the challenge of what that looked like and the financial implications that that would have for each person, and how that would be just a much more drawn out experience. Flash forward to now, I am with a person who I feel so much more aligned with, so much more spiritually connected to. And we bought a house in September. We have been renovating that house into a space that we really love. And we are a few weeks out from moving into it. And I am so excited and grateful. Don't get me wrong, it has been a tough ride doing it this way. And I am so, so ready to move into this house, but I'm doing it in a situation, in a container, in relationship, in a way that feels so much more supportive. And even with the normal life stresses that come with buying and renovating a house, they feel better than they would have in a relationship that wasn't working, right? I'm with a partner that I feel really like we have a really strong connection and we're able to move through these trickier things that life brings on, and that I'm with someone that I feel committed to long term. And I've been able to buy a house in an area that I wanted to buy a house in. Previously, with my other partner, I would have had to sacrifice maybe moving further out of the city in order to do that, and maybe not getting quite the house that I wanted. Whereas now I have been able to stay in the city with my partner, which I feel incredibly, incredibly privileged to say, to create a space that I'm really, really excited to be in, to live in. And so what looked like this delay, what looked like me falling behind others, was in fact my life working out in divine timing, was in fact a redirect, was a delay that was absolutely in my favor. But had I gripped onto this idea that my friends were doing it then and that I was in a relationship and I should be doing that, even when it didn't feel quite right to be forcing that in the moment, I would have been in a completely different scenario. And the other exciting thing too is, although it's not my current partner's first house, it's my first house, and I get to enjoy the experience of purchasing my first home, which is a fucking big deal, with someone in a situation that just feels awesome and exciting. And so I share this example to reiterate that in the moment, it can certainly feel like you are facing some sort of failure, that you're falling behind, when in fact, everything happens in divine timing. Because mistaking pause, delays, or redirects for failure can get us into situations of forcing something that is not meant for us. And when we connect to slowing down as a window of time for powerful data collection, where we can finally hear our intuition, when we can access clarity on a level that speed could not provide us, it allows us to flow with the divine unfolding of our true paths, not paths that we are trying to force ourselves onto because Susie just got engaged and I should get engaged because I've been dating my partner for longer than Susie has. Or my business isn't feeling aligned anymore. And what I actually feel is that I should redirect. I should take some time to change my offerings or rebuild or look at a different path, but I'm scared because I'm going to fall behind Evan. And so I'm not going to do that. When we rob ourselves of these moments of pause, of space to find a more aligned path, then we rob ourselves of the futures that are really meant for us. And best of all, in these moments, our nervous system gets a chance to exhale. And scientifically, you think differently when you are in a state of rest and digest, which means more insight, more creativity, more emotional intelligence, all essential parts of feminine leadership and all parts that require space to flourish. So while it can feel like you're falling behind, while it can feel like a version of failure, when you shift perspective to an opportunity for realignment, it takes on a whole new shape. And it'll likely propel you much further into something that feels much better for you than if you had just kept pushing that boulder up the hill, resenting each step along the way so that you could just prove that you were keeping up. So I say, drop the damn rock, get in the river and flow with the water, because growth that is forced is unsustainable. It will lead you to places that you don't actually want to be. And if you keep forcing, unfortunately, you're going to get there and it's going to be too late to realize, fuck, if I had just taken a moment, if I had not equated this season with failure, I would have realized I don't even want that shit anyways, or at least not in the way I thought I wanted it. The growth that you want, that is rooted in alignment, is magnetic. It's going to draw even more things that you actually want into your life. So please remember, you are not a machine. You are a living, cyclical being. So let's stop measuring our worth. Let's stop measuring our success by constant forward motion. Sometimes the most courageous thing that you can do is pause, breathe, and trust that you're exactly where you need to be. And on that note, I'll see you next Friday for another rule that I give the big old fuck you to.